Okay, I'm going to call the meeting of the Six-Town Regional Planning Board Facilities, Transportation, Finance Subcommittee meeting to order. June 1st, 2021. We are meeting remotely over Zoom because of the pandemic. And so we will be doing attendance and any votes by roll call. I will take, I'm Mike Naughton, the chair. I will take a roll call attendance. Jane Dutcher.
Present.
Helen Genovese.
Present.
David Young.
Present.
Mark Abrahams, Matt Abrahams from the Abrahams Group, and Tanya Gaylord from Pioneer Valley Regional School District are also here. And Michelle Geruso and Lynn Reynolds are not here at the moment. First item on the agenda is Matt Abrahams. You have something to show us?
Yes, I do. So I've made, can you hear me okay?
Let me change the share so other people can share the screen. There we go.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
This is Matt Abrahams from the Abrahams Group. So the work that I've been focused on is we're calling it the budget file. It's not yet a complete budget file. It will be, but we are progressing towards that. Currently, we continue to be focused on the salary portion of it. You may recall the last time that you saw this file in a much former state. It was still a work in progress, but we were working off of old budgetary not old. That's the wrong word. Current budgetary tabs, and kind of enhancing it, adding to those tabs. That admittedly was not the cleanest way to approach it. And I know that the group that's with us today felt the same way. So we've kind of regrouped on that a little bit and taken a little bit of a different approach on what I'll call cleaner tabs that are more functional. And I'm planning on showing you where I am with that today, but I'll admit that it's still a work in progress and there's more work to do here. But I feel like it's far enough along that I can show you the basics. You can comment on it. You can provide feedback whether this looks good, whether it doesn't, whether we're on the right track, whether we're not. And just know that assuming we are on the right track, this will be completed shortly, and I'm willing to send it to you at that point so that you can play around with it as well. So I plan on just walking you through this. I know Tanya's on the line, and Tanya did help me over the last week to 10 days, trying to get a little bit more comfortable with the Pioneer Valley data on the teachers. And Tanya, thank you for your help. This is the first time she's seen this updated version, I believe. We tried to touch base recently, we just weren't able to do it. But one thing of note is that when I last showed you this file, I was actually working off of the wrong data set for Pioneer Valley, and I didn't realize that at the time in terms of getting the FY22 teachers in here properly. Tanya helped me get the right, Tanya helped point me to the right set of data, which is now being used with what we're looking at here. The work that I've done to enhance this is, I think, in a really good spot for the Pioneer Valley teachers. I need to do a little bit of cleanup on the Gil Montague teachers, but that should be fairly straightforward. So
Mike, can you remove that this meeting is being recorded? Notice it's right across the screen.
I think you have to acknowledge it on your end.
You have
Yeah.
to click continue.
Really? All right. Done. Thank you.
Yep. That's Zoom covering their bases, I think, so that you are saying it's okay to record me. Anyway, so I plan on walking you through what I have here for Pioneer Valley and showing you how the flow of the file works. So we're going to start there. So that starts here on row 114. Above that is Gil Montague. So what I've done here is, and you can see it as we go downward, I've started with Bernardston Elementary. I've pulled in all the teachers there. And then we go to Northfield next. But one thing that's different about this file compared to the last time you saw it was this area right here. So we've added in the FTE data, we've added in lane and step. Now that lane characterization of D in this case is, and Tanya, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is a Tanya specific lettering that she used to help her with the salary schedules when she did linking. That D does not actually represent a step, I'm sorry, a lane. But if we were to look at their salary table, which is here, I've added them to the top here. So D actually stands for
Masters.
Masters right here. Yep. So I've pulled in the salary table for Pioneer Valley, and Tanya provided this to me in Excel format, which is helpful. And I'm now using a formula in this cell to pull from that salary table. So if you keep an eye on this cell right here, if you were to change this to, let's go with 5D, for example, that number automatically changes. All right, and Tanya, like I said earlier, I'm planning on sharing that with you, so you have that if you ever want to use it.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's similar to the way that I had done it. I knew there was a way for you to do that with what information.
Yeah, it's a lot of if-else statements. That was the way I came up with it. I thought a SUMIF might do it, but I don't think a SUMIF you can do. I don't think you can do it with a SUMIF. Anyway, so if you were to go, let's say we want to go masters plus 30, and we want to go down to, oops, wrong tab. And we want to go down to the bottom of it. I think it was E, right? You just put that in and you get an updated salary. So there's a lot of flexibility built in here. If you want to go bachelor's, the very first step, go B1. Oh, that didn't work. That's because it's, maybe I haven't played around with it. Oh, that's because it's, you gotta do 1B. I'm sorry, 1B. Okay, so that gets you the very, actually it'd be 1A, right, Tanya? 1A gets you the very first one. Yeah. But the ones that we have in here now are actually taken from the budget. So we're starting with the budget. And, you know, if you, the committee, or if whoever's playing around with this file wanted to put different lanes and steps in there, or you want to remove teachers, add them, you know, that's one way to do it. But for now, we're starting with the budget. We have the actual teachers by grade here. We've added the grade level as we talked about last time. Any subject coding we have here. At the elementary level, it's not much. You know, it's usually just a classroom teacher, but we've added anything else that was of note. As you can see, there's an adjustment counselor, there's a nurse, there's a PE teacher, there's a reading teacher. And then off here to the side, and this was something that Tanya and I also talked about, let's incorporate other funding sources besides just the general fund. We want to make sure we're accounting for that as well. So even though this individual's salary is this amount right here, because of his or her step in lane, what's the actual funding of that person's salary? So based on Tanya's budget file, most of it, over half of it, is in the general fund with 22,000 that's not part of the general fund. And we've noted that here. So if you wanted to just focus on what's in the general fund, you know, you'd be focused on this column right here, in AC. And we also have the longevity and any other amounts that were in here. I have some yellows here because that's really for Tanya and I to talk about just a little bit more, so I get a little bit more comfortable with some of these data points. But we have longevity, we have something called, I think I put other in just in case it wasn't longevity, but just to classify this column here, AB, as anything besides the salary that's funded out of the general fund. Okay. And then some comments off here to the right as well. But that's taken from Tanya's budget file.
Matt, can I ask a general question?
You may.
So if it doesn't have a note next to it, like adjustment counselor and so forth, then does that mean they're classroom teachers? And if, do we have like music teachers, art teachers, if they're shared from the different schools? I don't know if they are, maybe they're dedicated, but if there was a music teacher here, would it have music next to it like PE does? So we know that was there, and if it was at a 0.4, then we maybe see a 0.6 in another, like Northfield's budget or something like that. How are you treating shared people if we have them?
So right now we don't have shared between the two schools for our music or our PE.
Oh, really? Okay. So I
So
had.
is
so-
music, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just kind of building on Tanya's point. Then I misunderstood some of her data. So it's good that we're getting this sorted out. I had the music teachers as district-wide.
So they're under that, what we're calling the title of it has been shared because we used to share them across the district, but that account number's name is actually going to be specialist teacher salary. We are keeping them at the 0.6 district-wide because as enrollments change and things change at the elementary level, we still want the flexibility for them to be shared if they need to be shared. But right now, because we only have the 2 elementary schools, they are designated, and you do have the locations for those, I think, next to them. And we talked about that last week when we met.
So should there be, Tanya, next to one of those elementary numbers before the salary, should it something say music and something say art, so it identifies those people with those amounts?
There should be music.
Oh, I see it there.
Yeah.
So I must just have these misclassified because Tanya just clearly said that they are by school. When I was going through the file,
Okay.
I didn't notice that, so I need to get that updated. But I have them as district-wide right here. So I'm assuming that these, so we got 2 district-wides here and we got 2 district-wides down. Oh, that's ELL.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, but there's a music one here. So presumably this music one belongs to one of the schools and presumably this music one belongs to one of the schools. I just don't have that class yet. So
Yeah.
those are things that Tanya and I can get worked out. Yep,
Thanks.
sure.
Yeah, and the ELL is fine to leave as district-wide right now because it is elementary, but those kids get retested, and right now it's split like 0.4, 0.6 is a shared one will be between Northfield and Berniston for next year. There are 2 separate teachers doing that position right now, but we budgeted it as 1 FTE between the 2 elementaries because we were hoping that we would have 1 person serving them both. But budget wise, it covers the needs for the district, whether it's 1 teacher or 2 teachers.
Good, thank you. So let's talk about the FTE column. I already mentioned this is a new column. I thought it made a lot of sense to get that in here because that obviously impacts the salary, and for anyone who's doing budgeting and planning, you need that because that will impact the dollars that are being carried as part of the budget. So that's embedded in this formula here now. It's part of the formula here now. So if you were to change this particular individual, so I have it highlighted, this particular PE teacher is 0.7. If that goes to 1, then it automatically updates the salary here. So that 69,512 represents that person's full salary on the salary scale at 1 FTE. If it goes back to 0.7, then that gets adjusted as well. So I want everyone to be aware that that flexibility is worked in here as well. And as was just discussed, Tanya and I will work on this just to make sure that district-wide is truly district-wide. And if it's not, then where should these teachers be based? we'll get that sorted out. That's not a hard change at all. And like I said, she hasn't seen the latest version of this file, so I'm sure she could have picked that up pretty quickly.
So how are we picking up benefits when what is functionally to the real world a half-time job can be benefited and is benefited under municipal law?
How are they being picked up? They're not being picked up in this portion of the file, but I assume they're part of the regular budget. It's got to be some type of benefits line in there somewhere, I would believe.
Yeah, so David, for the active employees for the health insurance, the budget is based on the individuals that have opted insurance as of January 1 when we're doing the budget, and then we add additional plans for contingencies for changes in staffing and life change events that occur to some of our staff during the year, whether they get, say, married, divorced, there's death in the family, a kid maybe turned 26, those kind of things. So we have that contingency built in, which we didn't used to have, because there are changes in, staffing throughout the year that we have to account for.
So that's attached to the individual teachers. It's not attached to the position. Is that what you're saying?
No, because not everybody takes insurance, and if we-
I realize that, but so this does not refer to a person. This just refers to a position.
No, this is a position in person for payroll. Benefits is not done this way. We don't budget benefits for everybody in the district. This is just payroll.
Where do you keep track of who gets the benefits and who doesn't?
We have Suzanne, who is our payroll coordinator, HR coordinator. She has a spreadsheet that she has all of that information in. She has her Blue Cross Blue Shield bills, and we do that analysis budget every year in January to base what our budget for the following year is going to look like.
So then she just gives you a total that you add into the budget and you don't keep track of it here at all?
This is just salaries. Salaries and benefits are two completely separate things.
I realize that, Tanya, but both of them are items within the budget. And I'm trying to figure out how does the benefit get into the budget? As a lump sum from her? Or is it itemized someplace within this set of?
No, what you're looking at is just your positions within the district and the salaries attached to them. The way that the insurance gets in is she puts this spreadsheet together. It is by person. There are totals in that. You guys are provided that detail when we do the budget, the insurance budget, and then there's additional plans budgeted within that. So it is like a lump sum, but there's detail behind that lump sum where the numbers came from. There's an analysis that goes into what we budget for the active and retirees annually.
Okay, Matt, how do we get that into this?
Natural
That
progression,
is,
right?
yeah, as I say, that's separate from what we're trying to do with these. These sheets are meant to get the salary budget and try to figure out what the education provided to the education committee so that they can look at the number of teachers that are needed for each, subject, grade, et cetera.
Oh, that's not what this committee expects out of this spreadsheet.
Well,
Mike,
maybe it's another one that, we do
Yeah.
want something that's a predictive model, and we want to be able to test these assumptions of it. Right now, this is basically a hard number that's based on the takes, those who say, yes, I want it, and then what are they signing up for and what's our cost, which makes sense to reflect reality. For us to project into the future, we'd kind of like to learn something about what's going on here.
Right, but let me just jump in and say that what Mark and Matt are doing now in this piece is what we asked them to do. Your question, Jane, is a different task. That's a different thing. So they're going over, from my view, they're going over what the expectation was that they're working on.
Well, can I jump in here and say they are doing part of what we asked them to do? Maybe you can clear this up, Matt. Is this file intended to eventually produce a complete budget for the district? Or is it just supposed to produce a salaries budget?
No, our plan is to have an entire budget.
So the benefits will be included somehow.
Yeah, well, the benefits are included in the budget. They
Yeah.
will be included somehow. I guess we can have discussions on what that should look like. If we are tracking individuals if we are tracking salaries at the individual level, which we are doing, as we're looking at right now, then technically we would have the ability to also track benefits at the individual level. It's more work, but I presume we could make it happen as long as we're smart about that design.
Well,
Right.
and I think
To
what we're
provide my
looking,
spreadsheet to Matt that we used for the budget, and then they could take that and run with it. But like,
well, I guess I'm thinking that we want what my understanding and Jane and David and Alan, feel free to chime in. My understanding is that what we want to get is something that starts with the detail as this sheet we're looking at right now does with salaries, okay? But there will be other sheets that deal with benefits and other aspects of the budget, and takes that detail and combines it, aggregates it together into categories, overall categories for an overall budget. Now, David and Jane, is that what you think we're asking for?
Yes,
Okay. And Matt, is that what you think you're going to give us?
To be honest, Mike, I hadn't thought about it until our conversation today, but we have looked at that the health file that Tanya's described, because we've done analysis on health insurance and the combining of into a region before and what the impact on the benefits would be. We've done that analysis before, so we worked off of that individualized file that Tanya's already talked about. We've worked off of that file before, so I'm familiar with that file. I haven't seen it recently, but I know we'd be able to get our hands on it if we needed to. So if that was the wish of this group, then I feel like it's doable. We'd have to take a look at it and be smart about the design, like I said, but I believe it's something that could happen.
I think where we want to get is to have a budget that, as the budgets that we've seen for the districts, they have kind of summary pages that show the general categories.
Yep.
But if you look at those numbers on those pages, those numbers are based on detail that exists somewhere else.
Yep.
In the budget file. And
Yep.
I think that's what we're looking for here, right?
Yeah,
yes.
and that's what we've already started working on. I mean, granted, we're just at the teachers level at this point, but we are establishing a detailed tab, which we are looking at right now. And you can see just to the left of this tab, there's a summary tab for the teachers as well. So we've already started the detailed versus the summary piece, because that makes a lot of sense to us as well. So I think,
Okay.
I feel like we're on the same page there.
Okay, but I think it sounds like we are. Is it Alan, Jane, David, you?
Yeah, I just was concerned that we can't ignore insurance. It's certainly not an insignificant amount of the budget. And I wasn't seeing it anyplace, so that's why I asked my question.
Well, and,
Yeah.
and my concern was we've got variable analysis of steps and such, and like to be able to, see how sensitive is everybody racing to take, everybody who's eligible racing to take insurance, and what would be the impact? Because we've all seen it when the spouse gets offered something that's just an insurance bonus if you get the insurance that you're at the other person's work and pull the family plan. So it'd be good to be able to model how bad it could get.
Exactly.
so that's what I was actually just gonna say. So you could take the actual data that we use for the budget and say, okay, these were the people that opted for the insurance. And I can actually try to get Suzanne to give me that based on the open enrollment that just ended. So we know actually who is signed up as of now for next year versus what we actually already budgeted. But the other pieces, and David can speak to this a little bit because they did do an analysis on it before my time at Pioneer, looking at if we gave people like a amount for opting out of our insurance and to be on their spouse's insurance. But when you look at the amount of people that are actually eligible versus the amount of people that actually take the insurance, there's quite a few people that don't take it that are eligible. So you might have, 25 instructional assistants that make $20,000 a year. They're on their husband's insurance because if they were to pay for ours, it would, wipe out a fourth of their pay or something. So there's quite a few people that are eligible that do not take it. And that's why we do this actual analysis based on the people that are enrolled. And then we add contingency plans. And that has worked for us for the last 3 years since I've been here. Because if you budgeted for every single person that was eligible for insurance and budgeted them at a family plan, your budget would be through the roof. So you guys can take that information and kind of meet in the middle, maybe somewhere, and maybe add more plans, say maybe 10 instead of 6, if the committee is more comfortable with that. But budgeting for everybody that's eligible your numbers would be out of the water, and it will never happen.
I don't, Tanya, that's not what we're asking for. We're asking to indicate on this file, on this sheet, or a very similar sheet, who is eligible, and if they are eligible, which plan they're taking. Very similar to your step and lane columns there.
Yeah, it might be easy enough to add who has it, but the other thing is the eligibility, because there are vacant positions. I do have a question for you guys though, because you're talking about detail for every line, and that would essentially be for me, and I don't know how Joanne does her budget, but if you're looking for detail for every single expense line in the budget and being able to play with that and have variables, my whole budget is done in Google Sheets, and there are details and intent of expenditures for every single line item. But I don't know, with the time restraints that we have, how many of those detailed, or if you guys are just looking at, linking the salaries and the benefits essentially per person, because we're looking at, figuring out what the new person piece looks like, because you're still going to.
I'd be more interested in the overall workable model, and I would feel a little danger if we were to tie it down, since every one of these lines is not only a position, it's a person. I don't want to know if they're on insurance or not. I don't want that to be in the, in the spreadsheet. But if our starting point of the static look is that 57% of eligible employees take insurance, if we could vary that and see what the impact on the budget is, if 5% more, that's the kind of model I'm looking for. It doesn't have to have that many working parts to satisfy me.
Is that
So,
clear?
right, I had one other quick question. I hope it's a quick question. I guess it's more for Tanya. Tanya, does the active employee and the retired employees, are they at the same ratio? I know it's different for different, it may be different depending on what plan they have. You may have different percentage.
Nope.
But how does that, is it the same or not? Because you're on the GIC and you switched, right? So are you self-insured now?
No. So we are so there's two pieces to this. So we have the Hampshire Trust Group, which is for active employees and non-teacher retirees. So administration that's not eligible for MTRS, and like our PBASP members, those retirees are on Hampshire Trust. The others are on GIC. So the GIC, they kind of have their own formula, and it's the amount that we contribute is a little different with the GIC because it is through the state and the whole 9 yards, but our percentage that we contribute is the 75% for all of the Hampshire Trust policies. The GIC
Okay.
through like the assessment process, and depending on the policies. Now, I will say one of the things that I was looking into is actually getting all of our retirees back including teachers back on Hampshire Trust, because it could save us up to like 90,000 a year, but there's quite a process that you have to go to with public hearings and so forth, which didn't seem feasible to do during COVID year. That could get those retirees back and have everybody on Hampshire Trust, because 99% of them are just on a Medicaid add-on or supplement plan. There's only like a handful that are actually retired and on a full active plan that aren't Medicare or Medicaid, whatever it is, eligible. So Hampshire felt that there was very little risk in taking those retirees back on for just our MedX plan that we have through Hampshire Trust. And when comparing the cost, there would be a significant savings. But again, when I looked at that last year, we were in the middle of COVID, and the retiree board didn't feel that we would get a good turnout and result from that public hearing if we were to do it for this fiscal year.
That's interesting, because that group was pulled over to GIC for dollar savings when it was done. I can't tell you what year it
Well, you
was.
have to remember who was on board when that happened. So I
don't think it had anything to do with who was on board. There were all the hearings and all of the presentations.
I have to mute you guys. I have a call coming in I have to take. I apologize.
Okay.
So Pioneer
we have a
and
hard
and
shut-off,
Town of
right?
Warwick have to annually file a statement as to why we're not on GIC and show that we're getting a better deal. The problem with moving insurance from trust to trust is the roll-off expense. It's not like premium-based insurance. And so if I got a hip replacement and the deal's not done, the insurer, the town or the district ends up carrying the bill. The new insurer doesn't pick it up and the old one's done. So you have to have a bunch of money to self-insure the transition from open and active cases. I looked at that to go into Maya from Hampshire Trust.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
Okay.
You remember,
so
David?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that if there was information that Matt needed regarding the insurance, that was the purpose of my question. We have a hard shut off, right? Is there, am I right or not? And I guess, Matt, I don't know if there's other stuff you need to show us. I
So,
don't ask you more questions.
Yep. So I have another meeting at 5 o'clock, so I will have to hop off just before then. I cannot stay later than that. And I do have a little bit more I would like to show you. So we can continue along if that's okay with everybody.
Yes.
Okay. So the rest of it, it's the same stuff going downward. Now we're getting into the PVRS area, and there's more there for subjects because the subject is more defined at the PVRS level. At the elementary level, it's more grade classroom teachers, so there's no subject typically for those. These were pulled from Tanya provided us with a salary file that was a data dump out of the financial system, and as part of that, there was a descriptor related to each of the teachers. So I just had to link an additional file to pull those in, but I was able to do that. And these, at some point, we'll go back through these just to make sure that these are fully accurate. I'm not sure Tanya's had a chance to look at it, and I haven't talked to her about these. But that's based on that file I was just talking about. Now we're getting down to the SPED area. So the reason why SPED is listed last is because it's the order in which I went through her tabs. We started with elementary, then we started with PVRS, then we went to PVRS, and then we went to the SPED tab. So this can be sorted any way we want, but this is the way I have it right now. So for SPED, we have a few rows of just, I'll just call them SPED teachers. That's what these represent. And in Tanya's file, there's actually a whole grouping of SPED paraprofessionals, which we have not yet included because they're not on the salary scale. This is just based on individuals on the salary scale. So we have a few SPED teachers at Berniston, we have a few at Northfield, we have a few at PVRS, and we have a few at the district-wide level. And then we have psychologists at the district-wide level, occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech, 2 more sped teachers, I believe, at the district-wide level. There's probably a better description that could be used to segregate these 2 groupings right here. I just don't know what it is as of now. And then a nurse who is specific, I believe, to 1 or 2 children. And if I recall something that Tanya said, those children, those students may be moving to PVRS. So this location, I think, is changing for this nurse. And then at the bottom, we have totals. So this is the PV line for totals. It's an amount of 90.3 FTEs, a total of 100 teachers, I believe, that have a lane and a step. There's your total budgeted salary amount. So everything that the teachers would earn is right there, 5.673. Here's the breakdown of what's salary and longevity for the general fund. This is your general fund total. That's your other fund total. And there's your total amount for all funds right there. This is just the PV portion. Like I said earlier, I gotta get the Gil Montague teachers sorted out. That shouldn't take me too long. But at least you understand, or at least you've seen the flow. Hopefully you understand it, of what this tab can be used for and is currently being used for. So at the summary level, what we've done is really just kind of, we've summarized, but if there's a teacher, we wanted to put all the teachers that had a similar setup on the same line. So the first line, the first tab, you saw every single teacher, and we did it because every single teacher has a lane and a step. Therefore, every single teacher, technically could have a different salary, I guess. So it's important to do that at the detail level. Here's where we're starting to summarize it. The main difference is we've eliminated the FTEs from this tab. We've eliminated the step and lane from this tab. And in lieu of those things, we're doing a count of how many teachers have the same things that are listed here. So how many teachers are PVRS that we currently have qualified as secondary and are a nurse? That's what this will tell you. There are 2 of them, and there's the total salary for them. And here's your breakdown that's also being carried for the other funds. That's probably not the best example. If we go up a little bit more and we get to Bernardston here, this is a good example right here. Here's your classroom teachers, 11 total. 11 total without a further designation. There's a reading teacher and probably doesn't have his or her own classroom.
Matt,
But-
clarification.
Yep,
That 11 means 11 FTEs.
it means 11 people. But pulling in the FTE is probably a good idea, Mike. Let's do that.
Okay.
I didn't think to do that, but that's a good idea. That'll be easy to pull in. So we can have a count of how many teachers, we can have the total FTEs and the total dollars. So Northfield currently 12 teachers included, 12 classroom teachers included. And then once you get to PVRS, you're really at the subject level. How many do we have? So here we have 3 science teachers, we have 2 English at the high school level, 2 social studies at the middle school level, 2 math at the middle school level. And here are your speds down here. I think that.
So Matt,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so are you able to show the salary schedule that, let's say, bachelor's 15 and it has the number 7, and master's plus 30 and it shows the number 15? Are you able to populate a chart that just shows us how many are at each one of those lanes and steps from this?
We can do
Or
that.
do we have to go?
We
That would
can do
be
that.
incredibly helpful. So for
Okay.
future
You think we need that, Alan?
negotiations, pardon?
You think we need that?
Yeah, if that's an easy thing for him to do, because for future negotiations, when you look at that, you would instantly see where people are landing on this salary schedule or on a salary schedule. So we'd have an immediate idea of if we decided we were going to make a salary schedule a certain amount or a step in education, we'd know what we'd have to multiply it by immediately to say how many dollar amounts would there be there. Can I assume that the paraprofessionals, they don't have any steps, there's just a salary schedule? Is that right, Matt?
They don't have steps. I don't believe they have steps. I'm not-
Right, so
I'm
they
not
would just
familiar.
have, yeah, I don't think they do. So they would just have if someone's here for 10 years, it would show a salary schedule and it would show 10 years, this is what you get. Right,
I think that's a fairly easy thing to accomplish down the road. I think it's more important that we get this married with Gil Montague, who has a different schedule than Pioneer does.
okay, fair enough. I'll defer that. But if that's an easy thing for you to show, Matt, that would be really, I think, useful.
Does it matter? Do you need all the other detail? Do you need to know how many by school or by subject, or you just want to know total? So it could be presented like at this level, for example.
No, don't touch anything you're doing, because what you're doing is absolutely terrific. I didn't know
No.
if there was just a separate thing you could just show, a chart or a salary schedule
Yeah,
that only
no.
had numbers on it. We
Not,
don't
not
need
pla-
that too.
Not planning on changing anything I've already shown you. I'm just trying to get at the level that you're looking for. Would it be just like at a table like this? You want to know how many people and a table like this?
Yeah. Yeah, a table like that, and if it actually had that amount in the number there, and then in parentheses or something showed there were, 19 teachers or 17 teachers or whatever the number is. That'd be really helpful. I'm looking futuristic right now.
Yeah, I don't think we need to tie it into subject.
What about by school? Did you need to know that by school, or you just need to know by district?
For what Alan's talking about, I think the district is fine.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
not difficult to do at all.
Unless
Yeah,
someone
yeah,
sees a
Mike,
problem with that.
No, Mike, that's exactly right. I don't care what school they're in. I just wanted to know where they landed, the number. So yes, Mike.
You just want to know that there are 6 at B8.
Correct.
Yep. Okay, no problem. I can have that for you.
That's actually
Thank
in
you.
the spreadsheet that I sent to you, the raw data. Sorry, I just hopped back on the call, Matt, but the file that I sent you that has this in it actually had the number of FTEs that were in that for next year, because I had to send it to the overseer to calculate what the increased cost was for next year for the budget. So you have that raw data as of now.
You're saying I have the number of FTEs by step and lane?
Yes, so if you look at the raw data that I sent this file to you in that had the FY21 at the bottom, if you actually scroll down, there should be FTE, yeah. So all these, if you scroll down in here, see all these FTEs?
Mm-hmm.
That is, scroll up just a little bit where it says 80.5. It's right there.
Okay.
And I multiplied that by the cost, and that's how I came up with the increase for the cost, and that's how I came up with the increase for the
Yeah, you're caught in a loop.
yeah, I'm not sure
but
what
that-
happened with that.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it sounds
but no,
like the
that's
information's
perfect.
available then.
Yeah,
Right,
that's-
right.
Matt, did you have other
that's all we need
things?
to know.
So, but I can add additional functionality so that if you were to tweak things here, for example, it would flow. But this is based on, I think, Tanya's current setup of teachers.
Yeah, it should flow, man.
Yep, no problem. Okay, so I have about just under 10 minutes. Let's talk about what you've seen so far and just provide feedback, good, bad, whatever you want to provide. So I can take some notes on ways to make this better.
I like what I see so far. I've already expressed my concern about being sure that the insurance piece is in here someplace.
Yep.
We're also looking at other costs at some point, right?
Yes, yes. This has been the primary focus because it's a large, this has been the initial primary focus because it's the largest, it makes up the largest portion of the budget, dealing with the individual teachers.
How,
And then at some point, once we're comfortable here, that would be the next step, yes.
okay, and you are comfortable that you have your plan in place for putting Gil Montague in here and marrying the two?
Yep. Yeah, I'm not worried about that.
Good. I
That's
don't have
great.
any other,
David,
I've expressed myself. I'm good.
okay. Alan,
No, they're right on point. This is excellent. This is really, really good. If we
Okay.
get similar things, yeah, for the other parts, for projected, revenue and stuff, this will be terrific. Good job.
Lynn, I see Lynn joined us. Did you have any comments?
Looks good to me.
Okay, yeah, I will say, I will echo everybody saying that what we've seen so far looks very good. I'm looking forward to seeing more, in especially other parts of the budget. I do want to maybe just quickly mention, this might be getting a little ahead, but my vision, just to be clear, is that we will have a file that allows us to say, okay, here's the Gil Montague, here's a bunch of numbers that tie to the Gil Montague budget. Here's a bunch of numbers that tie to the Pioneer budget. Here's a combined region district that has numbers that tie back to those earlier numbers. And there have been, how do I put this, changes made because the combined district will not simply be the sum of the two
Yep.
individual districts. Okay.
But you don't want to lose the original linking that took place.
Right, that's exactly it. So I want to be able to see, okay, what was dropped in order to make the combined region? And we have talked at other meetings about maybe not dropping teachers because that raises issues having to do with negotiations and so on. But I know that in the previous report, there was an assumed number of FTEs in different areas to provide different programs of study. And I think we want to see something in the combined region that says, okay, in this combined region with this many FTEs in this areas, that could provide you, I mean, I'll just throw it out there, program 1 and program 2, so that we can see how different those are from what we would have keeping everyone. And my point is not to suggest that we want to talk about not keeping everyone, but I want to be able to get a picture of what additional capacity we have. If we combine both regions and keep all the teachers, we'll be able to keep on doing what both regions are already doing, and we will be able to do additional stuff. And based on who we have in the district, I'd like to get a sense of, okay, we've got an additional FTE in, say, English and social studies, but maybe not science. Who knows? I don't know what the answer is. That's what I'd like to know. Is I'd like to have something that shows us the answer. So is that, I hope I made myself clear. I don't know.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. There needs to be a comparative between what the ultimate budget would be for the combined region with changes in place. There needs to be a comparative between that and what was the original combined budget once that linking was done before changes were made.
Right. I think we're on the same page. Good. Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
So as long as we're moving in that direction, because we don't have that much more time before all this
Right.
has to be done. So
Yep.
what's your schedule, Matt, in terms of having something else to show us and even a file to share with us?
Yep. So considering the timeline, we got to keep moving forward, and we got to do so at a quick pace. So I'm planning on spending some good time on this in the coming days. I think having a meeting next week makes sense, if that makes sense to other people. So we can show you where we are. Maybe a good point for me would be, once I get the Gil Montague stuff in here for the teachers, I can share it with you at that point. But just understand that I'm gonna continue to work on it. So the version that you see at next week's meeting, assuming we have one, would look different than whatever I send you during this week.
I think we will plan on having a meeting next week, probably back to 4:30.
Yeah, and yeah, the 4 o'clock was because of my schedule, and I appreciate everyone's flexibility with being able to move earlier and allowing me to present today. Just because I have another meeting at 5, that's why that happened.
Okay,
Mike, how do people feel about doing a 4, keeping it at 4? Or was that hard for folks?
well, I know it's hard for
Instead of
Michelle.
4.
Michelle can't make 4, so that,
Oh, okay, that's the answer. All right, 4:30.
So-
does 4 work better for David?
I'd rather do 4, but I'll make it work, whatever.
I'm okay with it.
Well, I know Michelle said that she would join us when she could. I haven't seen if she's gotten on. Hearing nothing, I think the answer may be no. I'd like to figure on her being able to be here.
Well, Mike, maybe you could reach out to Michelle and see if she can make 4 next time, or it has to be 4:30, because if she's not able to make our meeting at all, then we could go at 4. If she's planning on making it, then we can have it at 4:30.
Good point, good point. Okay, why don't I do that? And so we will meet next week, and I'll send another announcement with a time.
Okay, and Mike, when I feel like the file's ready to be shared, I'll just send it to you sometime this week. You okay with that?
That sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks,
Great.
Matt.
I really like the fact that you're working so closely with the Finance Committee, both Mark and Matt. This is exactly what we envisioned, so very much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Yeah,
Matt,
this is looking good so far. So my only concern is that we still got a fair amount to do.
Yep, understood.
let me know what times work for you tomorrow and Thursday, and I will respond with my availability. I do have an admin meeting tomorrow at like 9:30, so but we'll get together to wrap those last couple of things up on our sheet.
Yep, I'll send you an email, Tanya, if that's okay with you.
Yep, no, that's what just so we don't forget and lose track of time. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, I am about to drop off unless anyone has anything else for me.
Okay. Matt, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
My turn.
Okay.
So, where are we? Last time we talked about the Chapter 70 impact, the loss of Chapter 70 aid with the 6-town region compared to Gil Montague and Pioneer Valley separate districts. And I mentioned last time the delta was growing from 207,000 in our phase 1 report to over 500,000 in the phase 2 report. And based on DESI's simulation, now about 669,000. Alan, I said I would write a brief update And so I sent that out 2 days ago, I believe. And it's a very brief update with the numbers embedded in the write-up. And I suggest you guys discuss that and send it to Jay Sullivan or send it to the Commissioner of Education so that what's contained in our phase 1 and phase 2 reports goes beyond Rob O'Donnell and Rob Hanna, who have been very good to work with, but it's not clear to me if this issue has been raised above them. So I don't want to take the time at today's meeting. Alan, you can review this and we can discuss this next time. Or the committee
Yes.
may want to chime in on it as well. So
Yep.
that's one thing. Number two, I sent you the big spreadsheet with instructions as to how to use the spreadsheet in order to get the numbers for all 6 communities and Pioneer Valley and Gil Montague as regions. And I did that because I also sent you oh, gotta call it up, hold on. Sent you 2 files. These are workbooks. This is Pioneer Valley. Each of the 4 towns, how the Chapter 70 numbers are computed. And then a summary spreadsheet that pulls together all the numbers for all the data points in the Chapter 70 calculations. So remember, the Chapter 70 is based on municipalities, not based on regions. To form a region, the numbers are pulled from each member that belongs to the region. And so you'll see here the 4 towns. And if you go into each cell, you'll see the link back to one of these tabs. And then you scroll down
Sure.
and you get the regional numbers coming together for 22, and then the Chapter 70 calculations for fiscal 22. There is a workbook for Pioneer Valley. There is a workbook for Gil Montague. And Alan, this goes back to your comment earlier about the Chapter 70 classes that I conduct. So this is a good reference for you relative to each of your communities, how the numbers come about, and then how the numbers are pulled together for Pioneer Valley, and then a similar file for Gil Montague. Number 3, I reached out to Rob Hanna, and asked him for explanation why his assumptions for the foundation enrollment going forward in the SOA analysis why there were inconsistencies between Pioneer Valley and Gil Montague. On the Gil Montague, they assumed 80% of the enrollment would come back and then leveled that. But in Pioneer Valley, they had 100% of the enrollment coming back, and I'm waiting for an explanation. Technically, I got an answer like about an hour ago, but I haven't had time to look at it. And he didn't answer the question, so I will be following up with him.
Mark, I have a related question.
Go ahead.
After thinking about it, after our last meeting, last year when we got the projections from DESE, they showed a declining enrollment over the next several years and declining foundation enrollment. And this year, they're showing a flat foundational enrollment after a certain point. And I wonder why what changed their minds.
So point of clarification, was it DESE that showed a declining enrollment in their SOA projections? Or did we, having received the NESDEC report, altered the foundation enrollment to mirror the projections in the NESDEC report? Does anybody remember?
I think the NESDEC was what was used by you guys to mirror that. I don't think it came from DESE.
DESE gave us foundational enrollment figures in the Appendix 11 and also 11A or 11.1, whatever the edition that we got later on. And they show enrollment in FY21 at 1,738 and going down by FY27 to 1,699. So they show a loss of 39 students over that period. NESDEC is something completely different. And that's a whole other topic. I don't think NESDEC is foundation enrollment. I would like to know what it is. But that's a separate question. DESE definitely has given us foundation enrollment. They sort of have to because they're figuring the foundation budget. And you need to have an enrollment assumption to do that. And last year they assumed that there would be declining enrollment over the period. And this time there was, after the first couple of years, which were oddball, I assume because of the pandemic, they assumed flat. So my question is, what changed? And can we assume that next year they'll assume it's increasing?
I'll ask them, Mike. Anything else on chapter 70 for now? So I would suggest over the next week, if you have an interest, to look at your community's numbers, and I'll do my best to answer your questions about that. Mike, did you post this to the drive?
Yes, I did, and I forwarded your emails to the subcommittee.
Thank you. And anything on chapter 70? Stop sharing. The last thing I have for you is give me a sec. Can you see my, my tabs here?
Yes.
So I've put together an enrollment workbook, which consists of foundation enrollment, choice in and choice out, and charter out, and I've put together the source documents for these files off the DESE website. I believe one of the things you guys wanted was your ability to understand from where these enrollments come from, the source documents. We have the benefit of the phase 2 report, which had charts in the report for example, choice beyond fiscal 15. However, the source documents on DESE's website begins with fiscal 15 through fiscal 20 for choice. The choice files also have financial information. It has the tuition revenue, and it has the choice revenue and the tuition expense as an expenditure. Same with the charter school. It has revenues and it has expenditures. So give me 1 second here.
I think, Len, you have 2 screens open, so I think we keep getting that feedback because you must have 2 devices open, I'm guessing. If you close one, we won't have that. I see you twice.
Well, let me try to close.
So one of the components of the tool is enrollment. And this is the first step in that part of the tool. So you have an enrollment workbook, Excel, and I've populated on the first tab, the regional foundation numbers, going back to fiscal 07. We selected fiscal 07 last time because that was the major change in the foundation formula, bringing in local contribution equity. These enrollment numbers go back to 1993, and I can populate that if the committee would like the foundation enrollment numbers all the way back to 1993. So let me know if you want that done. This file, the source document, is what's called the district profiles. And here's the website for that. And I can show you the whole district profile file if you want me to. I think you've seen that before. It's the file that has the foundation enrollment for every district, the foundation budget, the local contribution, townwide local contribution, the Chapter 70 aid distribution, actual net school spending, required net school spending, and then actual net school spending, and the amount of the actual net school spending greater than the required net school spending. I could show you that if you want me to. So here are your foundation enrollment numbers, Pioneer Valley and Gilmontague. There are no numbers of foundation enrollment at the 6-town level because all 6 towns are fully regionalized. The second tab is choice in and out, organized left to right by fiscal year. Gilmontague first, Pioneer Valley second. These numbers come from the Phase 2 report. These numbers come from the individual files that I showed you earlier. First is the enrollment, choice in and out, full-time equivalents. Second part is the receiving tuition with an adjustment plus or minus for that particular fiscal year. The third part is the sending tuition with an adjustment, lowering the sending tuition. Gilmontague first, Pioneer Valley second, source documents. One of the things we want to do is, where applicable, tie revenues and tie expenditures into the budget module for applicable students. And this is a beginning to identify the number of choice in and out students and their related revenues and expenditures. So this is from DESE, and I would need to work with Tanya and Joanne to populate fiscal 21 and fiscal 22. But I wanted to see if I was on the right track with your thoughts relative to the enrollment numbers, as well as the tuition and tuition receiving dollars and sending tuition expense. Number 3 is charter. Same layout, fiscal year for left to right. FTE, the tuition, facilities aid, transitional aid. So this is tuition out. This is receipts. The total amount of aid is the sum of these two. And then the net is the tuition out minus the aid in, netting out to the net cost of the districts. So if you go to this website, you'll get a file that literally looks like this. And then you select a district and the numbers come up, and then I populated this file from those numbers. I have a note here that fiscal 22 doesn't foot from the DESE numbers, and it's off by the facilities aid in both communities. And I need to talk to DESE about that. So that's charter. And the two districts also have tuition coming from, in Gilmona's case, Irving students and Vernon students for Pioneer Valley. And I'll need to work with Tanya and Joanne relative to the dollars that are coming in. as well as fiscal 21 and fiscal 22 numbers. And then I'm leaving a section for NESDEC once they provide us with that information. So my thought here was to list out all the enrollments by category: foundation, choice, charter, tuition, and have the ability to tie revenues to that for choice and charter and tuition. And then have the ability to link that back into the budget file for both revenues and tuition out expenditures. Thoughts?
I guess a question and then a thought. So it would be problematic to, it'd be difficult, well, maybe not difficult, let's say problematic for, as you look for the two regions to form a very new regional school district, because some of the choice in, choice out, come from the respective districts, and so they would be part of the same district. So just putting that aside for a second, is the idea here then that you would be able to pull the information as if it was a 6-town regional district from, the local contribution and what you showed in the previous screen for what would now comprise the totals in those respective categories for 6 towns and then come up? Or is that really kind of falls apart trying to simulate something like that? 'Cause I think originally we were trying to see, so what's the difference between a new 6-town regional and what that would look like versus, each district sort of, going on their own, so to speak, because, that's obviously going to be an essential question that we would have to answer. So I don't know if you're thinking, Mark, along those lines of then creating a 6-town, populating it, using the information you showed us in the previous charts.
So I think it's important to identify those students that are inter-choice. Pioneer Valley students that are choosing to Gil Montague students that are choosing to Pioneer Valley. To understand, the receiving tuition and correspondingly the tuition payments, netting those out, because those will go away, and
Right.
seeing what the net is. I think that's the question you're asking, Alan, and the answer there is yes. But I need a
Okay.
little more information relative to fiscal 22. We would do it on fiscal 22. You also see the magnitude of the dollars historically on all of these financial data. So yes, I agree with you on that.
There's a related question, which I don't know if we'll be able to answer, which is, how good an assumption is it that the kids who are now choosing from Pioneer to Gilmontague or vice versa will want to stay in a combined region?
Mhm.
That question has been raised a couple of times in this subcommittee, and I believe in the education subcommittee. I don't know that it's our subcommittee's job to answer that question, but I do think we need
I
to
think
keep
we have to
remembering.
decide what assumption, we have to choose what we think they're going to do and that, base it on that assumption.
Does anyone
Obviously,
know?
I think there probably will be some students that will say, well, I'm going to go to Frontier now. But I don't think we should try to figure that out. I think we should assume that if they're in one of our districts, they're going to stay here.
Yeah, and Tanya had just sent out that only 3 kids are going to Gil Montague. I would say it's a safe assumption that since the elementary schools are still going to be pretty much operating like they do with the autonomy that I think they're given in the respective districts, that I don't see any changes in people jumping ship to a whole new district in the elementary schools. So I guess, it'd be middle school and high school. I don't know, you make a good point, Jane. The other thing is going back, Mark, so I want to be clear on how did you answer the question? So you'll pull all the foundation numbers and everything and create a new district based on DESI's information that they have for minimum contribution and what that net school spending would be, and we would see how much above net school spending we would be in a combined, in a new district. Is that a possibility? Is that what you're thinking?
We did that last year. We showed, based on DESI's numbers, all the Chapter 70 related information for minimum local contribution for each town. We showed as a separate district and as a combined district. We're going to go and net out the school choice. Tanya, do you know how many kids are choiced from Gil Montague?
I'm opening that file and sending it to you right now.
Okay, I'll also need the related financial data because I don't know if they're regular students or if they're sped.
Well, the problem is the state hasn't issued their final document for the year yet. They usually do that in June with the true up that includes all the FTE and the actual assessment from what the final assessment to the district is for the whole year, and it will have all that data in it. So I don't have that yet.
Yeah, and keep in mind that the SOA projections that DESI gave us are based on the House budget, House Ways and Means.
Yeah.
The governor's budget is what I use for the regional workbook. And who knows when we begin to wrap this up in June, if we'll have the Senate, but I don't know if DESI's going to give us the Senate version. And then the state budget comes out, and a few days later, or that afternoon, DESI will post the final numbers. And so what do we do with Chapter 70 when you have townwide contributions that might change, and then the local district contribution to the 2 regions from the 6 towns that might change? The Chapter 70 distribution might change. Not clear if the minimum aid is going to change. So all that is fluid.
So I guess the bottom line would be the letter that would be going from the 6-town Regional Planning Board to the state would be able to provide basically 2 simulations that sort of validate the point that the state's going to have to look at this more seriously if they plan to encourage districts to merge or create new ones.
And we all understand why there is that loss because of the excess base aid over foundation aid in Pioneer Valley. We understand that. And I so stated it in that memo.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want you to think about is as these numbers change, what do we do in the Chapter 70 SOA section of the model? Because we're going to see Senate numbers, Senate Ways and Means numbers, conference committee numbers, which will then be the final numbers. And we have no idea as to the timetable on that, other than the Senate numbers should be out now that we've reached June shortly.
Mark, can I ask a question about the Student Opportunity Act? Because I think I missed out on that presentation when you did that, but because we are a hold harmless, we don't have any Student Opportunity Act additional funding coming except for the percentage of the special ed transportation. So how does that affect the combination of the two districts?
So let me
Lose or gain money that way?
let me amend what you said. Because you have that excess base aid, all the benefits that you would receive for coming out of the Student Opportunities Act gets lost in that excess. It's absorbed by
Correct.
the excess.
Yeah, exactly.
And the benefits are that there's added foundation rates for the fringe benefits. That's the biggie in the base. And then in the increments, you get added foundation rates for ELL students, low-income students, et cetera. So that's built in, and that's always going to increase your foundation budget, which in theory increases your foundation aid, but then it's absorbed by the base aid, the excess of the base aid. Whereas Gil Montague starts to see those benefits because they don't have that excess base aid over foundation aid. So coming together as a new region, you have to wait until that excess base aid goes away before you start seeing the benefits from Student Opportunities Act. And what was that? Was that in fiscal 24, I think, where it starts to reap the benefits? I can't remember exactly.
That's fine. I wasn't sure if that had already been taken into consideration, but, and again, the only thing that we will benefit from is that special ed transportation piece of the circuit breaker.
Yeah, and then that gets into the transportation numbers, which we still have to address. So that's an overview of what we've put together relative to enrollment,
Okay, Mark,
relative to Chapter 70.
Hi.
can we just take a quick step back to the question you asked before Tanya asked her question? Which is how we deal with the fact that the Chapter 70 amounts are likely to change due to budget negotiations.
Mm,
You said, how do we handle that in the model? And I'd first like to clarify, when you say model, do you mean the combined FY22 budget, or do you mean the projections going forward?
So in the projections going forward, we've got numbers from DESI based on SOA, combined region, and separate districts through fiscal 27.
Right, and what numbers did DESI use?
House Ways and Means.
Okay. But we have no details showing how that works, right?
Right. All we have is the workbook I put together, which is based on the governor's numbers. And DESI traditionally has never issued the detailed numbers as the budget negotiations proceed. They have never done that.
Right, they wait until the end, right?
That is correct.
But what I'm saying is that their projections going forward, I think my reaction to your question is that it would be helpful to know a little more about what the mechanism that DESI used to make its projections is. If we're just looking at FY22, it will be, I think, easy enough to adjust Chapter 70 numbers, minimum contribution numbers, et cetera, based on the final budget whenever it's agreed to, which historically may not be until the end of the summer or later, but whatever it happens and we get the numbers, they can be plugged in. What I'm not sure how we handle is then we look at DESI's projections and say, okay, how do we change, how do those projections change based on changes to the assumptions that they started with? And since we don't really know how they made their projections, I don't see how we can make, I don't see how we decide. I mean, we could sort of guess, we could make our own assumptions about how we should do it, but I think it would be helpful if we could get some more information from them. They started with the House Ways and Means numbers and they projected forward using something. What do they use? It'd be nice if it were straightforward so we could plug the final numbers in and have whatever mechanism they used recalculate everything from there. But we don't have that.
So what we do have, let me call it up.
That's what they're debating in the House, in the compromise is what, how they're
Yeah.
gonna populate those. So that's, they're gonna hold that close to their vest. If they ever came out with something and then districts started using it, they'd probably there would just be ammonium everywhere, and the state would be the scapegoat. Mark, are you
Well,
able to have, is your
Well, Alan,
spreadsheet
at some
such that you
point,
can
those numbers are going to be known. The budget,
Right.
If the budget is decided upon, those numbers will be known.
Of course. Mark, are you able to put in an assumption for foundation? If we put in something for foundation, would it ripple through accordingly? Let's say, the state said, okay, here's what we think your foundation would be. And we say, okay, well, we think you're wrong. Pioneer's not going to get back 100%, or we think Gil Montague's going to get back 90%. If you put that in, would that then impact your other numbers?
Let me read you what they say, and then Alan, I'll try to answer your question. For purposes of the 6-year simulation, we modeled that the full regionalization would occur in 22, and then present the results over the next 5 years. We use actual combined enrollment for 22, and then assume the year's enrollment losses for any grade span would be restored at 80% in the out years. In the out years, we also use the higher English learner by grade span and low income counts overall from 21 to 20 or 22. For the member towns, we hold income, property wealth constant over time, and we use multi-year averages of the growth factors. So Mike, this is their response to how they model. Now we know the 80% was true for Gil Montague, but they brought Pioneer Valley up to 100% of enrollment. And I've asked them for clarification on that. So Alan, to address your question, in order, all right, let's go back to what I presented last time. Foundation rates. Foundation rates are going to drive the foundation budget based on enrollment.
Mhm.
You saw the enrollment sheet. The enrollment was on the top. And then
Mhm.
for each grade level, there is a foundation rate per foundation budget line.
Mhm.
Every year, they're going to provide the foundation rates as part of the workbook. The workbook will come out the third Wednesday in January. That will populate the foundation budget. We know that. We know the mechanics of that. But then the House will run numbers, House Ways and Means, Senate Ways and Means, Conference. So there's 5 iterations of that before it becomes final. Unless they come up with a agreed upon joint resolution for Chapter 78. And then the numbers are frozen at that point in time. Point 1. Point 2, we know that there is statutory language for the Student Opportunities Act in terms of the growth for each fiscal year. I assume that's a growth in foundation rates. So the equation would be plugging in foundation enrollment, making assumptions on foundation enrollment on that top line, and then perhaps using the fiscal 22 foundation rates that we have and building something that would allow you to change those rates based on percentage increases. Now remember, you've got what, 10 or 12 columns and 11 rows that you would have to make assumptions going forward. What that will do is give you new foundation budget numbers going forward. What it will not do is give you the assumptions for foundation budgets for each town for the districts to which it belongs. So each town belongs to its own district, to either Pioneer Valley or Gil Montague and Franklin County. Under the combined district, each town would belong to its district, the 6-town regional district, and Franklin County. And so you would need to break your foundation budget and make assumptions. What share of that is the 6-town region and what share of that is Franklin? And then based on that, you would come up with a foundation share and then multiply that by your local contribution, townwide contribution, to see what your district contribution is to each of the 2 regions you belong. So that gets into the local contribution, which is the previous year's contribution, which we have, and then the growth factor. So we have the growth factor now. Does the growth factor go up or down in subsequent years? But you can model that and come up with a preliminary. And then if you go back to the workbooks I gave you the other day, you can see if your town is above the target effort or below the target effort to come up with your minimum contribution. But you can contribute whatever you want as a town to education. And thus, I mean, that's how the Chapter 70 numbers are formulated.
Yeah.
And that's the toughest part of this because there's so many moving parts.
Right.
So I wanted to lay that out to you now, let you chew on it, so we can come up with something that would be workable for you. And maybe the answer is we just plug in the numbers as they come out and live by that and have a more active model for the rest of the tool.
Yeah, no, I follow you. And I mean, the rate and that's established, I don't know how we would even guess at that. I know you said we could look at projecting, but yeah, there's just a lot of moving parts that it might make sense to, know we have that flexibility, and when we get information, plug it in as we go. Mike, I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree there are a number of moving parts, and we may just have to essentially make what we consider to be our best guesses as to how things are going to work. It seems to me that DESI must have made a number of assumptions, let's say, about how things are going to work. They must have explicitly or implicitly made assumptions about Pioneer Franklin County Tech enrollment when they figured foundation enrollment for a combined district and required district contributions for a combined district. We could, I guess, I mean, we could just assume that if we were, I can see some relatively straightforward ways to approach it if we could just look at what the percentages are in their projections and then continue to use those. But personally, I wish there were a way to get DESI to give us a little more information. They've presented us with a finished product, and other than their explanation at the top, which doesn't tell us a whole lot. I mean, they say we use multi-year averages of MRGFs. It would be nice to have a table of what those averages are, so we see what the numbers are, instead of just hearing that what they did was use averages.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be nice to have a little more information about how they did treat Franklin County Tech in the mix, and a little more detail about how they see the foundation. I mean, it sounds as if we're in a position of having to sort of figure out for ourselves how the foundation budget formula works and how it's going to change as a result of the SOA over time. They've already got assumptions built into their projections. Why not have a few sheets showing how do you get to the foundation budget for FY26? You're assuming this many students. Are you assuming them different grade levels with all the different categories? Or other categories? You must be assuming some sort of inflation index over that period. What is it? Obviously, it's all guesses. Maybe they're afraid that if they put too much down on paper, we'll say, oh, you were wrong. But
Well, that's
kind
part
leaves
of
us
it.
holding the bag, I think.
Yeah. Mark, historically, how close has, so DESI puts together, their stuff, and they, the legislators got to know that, they've got some financial gurus sorting through the impact on this on individual towns and so forth. Historically, how close has the final budget been to what they sent to the House as it makes its way to the Senate and then through, the conference? Are they
Doesn't change.
pretty close, or is it way off?
The Senate is usually more generous than the House and the governor.
Okay.
Maybe because they're last in the process. But if you recall, the Senate has increased the minimum aid from as low as $20 to as high as $50, $55. Whereas the House and the governor were lower than that. The Senate has made some minor changes in other aspects. They're close. And was it last year they came up with the local aid resolution? The three branches came up with that. I don't think there's been a year where, well, the Senate 1 year, Governor Patrick tried to go to 100% reduction in the excess of local contributions, and the Senate killed it. It made it 0, and then the conference committee restored it. So that was more of a political statement. Senate is close, more generous than the House.
So some things never change. So the House, we used to always consider that's the base, that was the starting point, and it'd probably be a little higher from there. Has that been true?
Yeah.
Yeah, my experience has that been true, except maybe one of the years during the recession.
Yeah.
So that's where we are at. Questions or comments?
I had a question back a while ago. Is there any reason that it would be helpful to know what grade level the choice students are at?
I think in the past, we were able to come up with which districts are they from and where they're going. I think we've provided you with that information.
I was thinking more along the lines that we're projecting for through 2027. If we have 3 choice students that are currently juniors in the high school, they're going to be out of here in 2 years.
I'll see what we can come up with.
I
So you're
looked,
looking,
I tried to find that on the DESI site and I couldn't find it.
you're talking choice by grade.
By grade, yeah.
Okay, let's see what we can come up with. Anything else for today?
No, but my brain's going to be chomping away past midnight here. You filled it too full.
Keep a notepad by your bed.
Mark, Tanya will have that information. So she knows where the choice kids are.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if there's some central file at DESI that provides that.
I thought
Yeah,
there
good
should be, because I know the districts have to report it, so.
Yeah, well, I spent a lot of time on their website pulling down this information for you, and I didn't see that.
Yeah,
Now,
well,
that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
I spent a lot of time looking too, and I couldn't find it, so. But I'm
Maybe
not-
it doesn't exist anymore, but I believe it does, because I remember we were looking at that, because I was trying to, someone asked me the question, how do we compare with choice in and out to other districts? And I was able to find something to be able to answer that question. So I think it's there somewhere.
They don't make it easy.
No. I think I had to call Jeff Wilson or somebody to say, where would I find this?
Oh, understand, Rob O'Donnell, Rob Hanna, very accessible, very good to deal with, and they've been very responsive.
And for all I know, Mark, maybe all the superintendents got together and decided to populate a spreadsheet so we all would have that information. I don't know.
Wouldn't that be
It was
nice?
a while ago.
All right, anything else for this evening from us?
David, Jane, Lynn? Mark, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Mark,
you
you have a
next-
very talented son.
I
Absolutely.
told you guys, he can do in 1 hour what it takes me 8
Yeah.
on Excel. Yeah, thank
He's
you.
good.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah.
All right, if you don't need me, I'll sign off.
Okay,
Thank you.
see you next week.
Thank you.
Okay, we don't have minutes from our last meeting, so we'll skip over that. The only other item on the agenda is use of remaining grant funds. Alan, I don't know if you want to talk at all about that, or,
Well, I haven't had a chance to get into the detail. I was gonna give Tanya a call, but I'm not Tanya, Joanne. So Joanne had received information that said we would be able to repurpose, if I'm understanding this, some of the grant money, if it's used for the same intent, beyond the, for an extension beyond the June 30th. And if I recall, that would be somewhere in the neighborhood about $7,000 that we haven't committed. Now I'm talking off the top of my head at the moment. So, so I think she'll be looking for, and I'll call her tomorrow. She'll be looking for, do we have any ideas as to how we might want to repurpose some of the remaining money? And we could expend it beyond the June 30th, if I'm understanding it right. So it provides a little flexibility. So the question was, what might we need money for? If the education subcommittee, I'm having a Zoom meeting tomorrow at 9 in the morning with Jay, and I don't know who else will be on there, to talk a little bit about their product. In my opinion, they haven't been making the progress that you have been making in monitoring and moving forward. So I'll have that conversation with them, because they will need to be able to, get surveys out to the community, and, not just online, but, mailings maybe to the communities, and, different venues. So they may need some money to then carry forward actually getting information from the various stakeholders. So some money could be set aside for any of the supplies or anything that might go along with that. And if they're looking for a little more assistance in that, I don't know. So I guess the question for you folks, if I'm on the right track in terms of how we could repurpose that, are you seeing some extension that a stone that we haven't turned over in this process, that if we have a little money that we could expend beyond the 30th and encumber? Your thoughts? Dave, you're on mute.
I would hate to see it spent on stocking up on office supplies like I think a previous grant did. And I would like money to be available so that we could have more contact with the consultants coming out the other end of this as we unspool it and have more questions. I mean, I think there's certain amounts built in already because of the understanding of the hard drop dead date, but I would like basically more of the same. Continued access. The best question we have, we might not have thought of yet.
Yeah, a stone that you think we might ask them to turn over that we haven't turned over yet or would like them to turn over? Anybody? David?
I think until we can have the spreadsheet and play with it, we're not going to know what our questions are. I mean, every time we meet, one or more of us come up with something that we see missing.
Yes.
And until we actually have a copy of it on our own computer and do some messing around with it to break it, we're not going to know what our questions are.
All right, so how about this? How about now, of course, I'm always under the, when I have to write to Michelle Griffin or whoever I have to write to say, yes, we would like to repurpose and here's why. I agree with you, David, by the way, what your previous comment. I have probably a week and a half to put together something. I'm wondering if, based on everything we heard today from both Matt and Mark, if you were to kind of, as you use your words, chew on that a little bit, funnel your questions to Mike that he puts together. Here are some other things we might want to dive into or questions we have around. I might be able to then put something together that sounds somewhat convincing and intelligent that steered them in the right direction without fully committing to X or Y, but they have an idea that this is the direction we're heading. So if people thought of, whatever questions or concerns you had, send them Mike, put together. Mike, in the next 2 days, if you put that together, I can see if I can play with it and then maybe have a conversation with you, Mike.
Alan,
Okay.
do you anticipate a contract extension then? Which,
I don't know. I got to be honest. I don't know. I've got to talk to Joanne. I don't know it was so much, David, as a extension, or it would be a new contract.
all right, either way.
Here's another area.
Sometimes at the end of fiscal years, I see strange things out of state government, like non-compliance, just dumping money. And I just wondered what the context was here, because we've been believing we have a hard end date.
Well, we certainly had one last year, and then we, obviously it went another couple of months that they finished up their work, but they had all their money and they knew that if they wanted our business that, we needed the finished product as best as we could get it. I interpreted this, David, as they finally recognized that, we got it late. We had a short amount of time. We've been working on it and doing the best we can. And it sounded to me like kind of soft language to almost be a wink. Oh, I'm being recorded. Let me see. It sounded to me like they were trying to create an avenue for us to be able to continue the work that we were trying to do with in the same ballpark, but not saying we want an extension on what you're working on, but rather we want to look into a new area that is relevant to what we're working on. If that's making sense as I'm talking between the lines.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, yeah, my reaction is I don't see any new stones to overturn at this point. But I do agree with David and Jane that being able to get more from the consultants if we want to might be handy. And that we won't really know until we actually get what they're going to produce. We've seen great demos, but we all know what that means.
Well, I think we're behind the 8 ball here in putting together a budget for a new district.
Mhm.
We're kind of all under the assumption that every teacher and every aide and every custodian is going to continue in place. But that begs the question about administration, and we haven't even talked about that.
Mhm.
Right now, when we look at those budgets, we've got 2 full administrations in there. And I certainly hope that a new district is not going to have that.
Well, I tried to touch on that earlier, Jane, because the previous report did assume that there would be savings on the administration side. And then it made
I
various.
remember that you did, Mike, excuse me. And the result was that we got pointed back to last year's report. It doesn't
Right.
help us in this iteration to say, we only need one superintendent, we only need one whatever.
Right, I'm expecting that the combined district is going to say that. That this magic budget file that we're gonna end up getting will
Well,
have.
and frankly, I know we're not supposed to look at cutting any teachers. But the model that we come up with may not need as many employees as we currently have.
Oh, I agree.
And I think that our job is to produce a product for a new district. Never mind what is here now. And I'm not sure we're headed good enough in that direction. Maybe we are. We can just go in and lop things off and see what it looks like, as long as we do it on copies and not the original document.
So Jane, to respond to you, one, I agree with you. I believe that is not the consultant's job. And so I do like the premise that's Mark, that Mike or whoever you're saying, well, okay, let's start with, here's how much it costs us, having the same staff, pulling both districts together and to see what we could teach and what other things we could teach. Now, the reality of it is if David is one teacher teaching 12 kids and 10 kids, David could now teach, 22 kids or 21 kids in one class. Now he has time in his schedule to teach another section. And so when we start to run simulations like that, that's when we come up with the potential of, well, wait a minute, we can actually offer more to kids and do it with fewer staff. Or staff that doesn't happen to have the skills and the language or whatever the content area is that we don't already have on board. So I am trying to intentionally not have the consultants tell us, the number we have. I think just give us what we have and we'll start to see what we'll be able to do for offering things to students. And the bottom line is it has to be affordable to the towns and a quality education. And if we have an economy of scale that we can do more with less, then it's a win-win. It's a win for the kids because they'll get things that they can't get now because you can't run a course with 3 kids. And it's a win for the town because we'd have a shorter staff. That's if we don't get hammered by the state by this initiative.
Well, I guess we're going to have a discussion with the state and get support from them, and not just for 1 year, but for 20 years or more. And I think I was pleased to look at the spreadsheet today, and I could see where I could go in there and say, oh, I don't need all these social studies teachers. I only need one, or whatever. I don't want to pick on anybody here, but we need to look at the enrollment and say, okay, we now have 100 seniors. So what courses do seniors need, and how many teachers do we need for that? we got to get down to the nuts and bolts here somehow. And I could see the beginning of that. And I could see that between Mike and myself, and probably David is good with Excel also. I don't know. Are you, David? We could add sheets to pull in data from other sheets without too much trouble.
Yeah, so just to expand your point though, Jane, I'd have to back the bus up a little further. And what you do is you take the freshmen coming in and then you take what courses or how many units that you need, and you know this, in science and math and social studies. And so how many credits do you need to graduate? And then that determines how many courses that you're going to offer in each field so that every senior, I mean, every student can go along that path and take everything they need so that when they're seniors or even juniors, if they want to really push themselves, can meet the education requirements. So it's more than, you know, just what can we offer? It's going to be it's going to be the new district looking at what are their standards going to be for the number of credits they need to graduate in
Right.
each content area.
And I don't know if I would assume the education committee is looking at the requirements in the two districts, how similar or dissimilar they are.
Well, that's a question
Okay.
mark, I think.
Are
That's
you-
a question mark. Alan, I was just going to say, I agree with what Alan just said. My hope had been that we would get a lot of that information from the Ed subcommittee. And after talking with Deb Potee, I came away thinking that wasn't going to happen.
Well, I don't
So-
understand what they're doing.
Well, I'll understand it more tomorrow, but I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be a difficult conversation with them because I think that, well, I don't know. Maybe their direction wasn't clear enough. I thought I had made it clear. I don't see how much they have accomplished to this point, but maybe there's even more going on. They did a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation at their last meeting to the Education Subcommittee. I only saw a little bit of it. And I'll just leave it at that. I left and didn't expect it to get any better. So we'll see.
Okay. To change the subject slightly, getting back to the grant, one thing that occurred to me, Alan, I thought I'd toss this out, is my understanding is that the Ed subcommittee had been talking about doing some sort of a survey and getting the consultants to maybe help them put together a survey. And it occurs to me, the town of Montague just did kind of a study of policing in Montague that involved doing a survey. They had a couple of volunteer citizens committees working. One of the committees put together a survey and afterwards basically said, well, we don't really know a whole lot about putting together surveys. And so we didn't do a very good job. And we think the town should hire a consultant if they really want to do this right. And so I'm not sure what the Ed subcommittee is up to along those lines, but if we're looking at how to spend any extra funds, I know that the committee in Montague went in with good intentions, thinking that they could do something useful, and as a result, you know, of what happened, ended up saying, oh, gee, this is essentially more complicated than we thought, and we didn't do a very good job. And I don't.
Well, a lot of people might think that they can, you know, surveys are easy, you know, you ask some questions, you put it together.
Right.
So,
Well, and some
you know, I
surveys are. I
learned
can ask if
completely
everybody
different.
wants to meet at 4 o'clock and have a pretty good survey. But when you get more complicated than that. So I'm just wondering if that's something to think about, and it's not really on our subcommittees. It's not in our area, but it occurs to be something that might be useful to spend money on if they really think that. I think they want to survey people in the district to find out what they're really looking for in a school. And if we could get a good answer to that question, it might be good.
You know,
Yeah.
statistically, the results from surveys are not that great. You get a 10% return. That's considered wonderful, unless
Hmm.
things have changed in the last 10 years.
Now, if you can get like 65% return on them, and it all depends, Jane, on the survey. It depends on the questions you ask. And the biggest mistake people make is you have to ask a question, the same question, 2 or 3 different ways. And people read it and they think it's a different question, but it's actually getting at the heart of the same question. And then you have to think about, when you're putting together a survey, when you get an answer and you put those answers together, you think about, okay, what will it mean if so many people, respond this way? And so the only way you can really get to it is the survey has to be both quantitative and qualitative. Now, Steve Himman is supposed to have expertise in the area of surveys, but to my knowledge right now, there hasn't been one. As a matter of fact, the Education Subcommittee is in the process of sending them 5 questions. I'm not sure why they're the ones, but they were asked to send 5 questions. I know that the Education Subcommittee is in the process of getting together some names of people from 2 stakeholders groups, and I'm not sure which stakeholders they are. And they are going to, in the next, before June 30th, they're going to meet with these groups, and they're going to be asking these questions. Now, my assumption is they're going to sort of field test the questions to see what kind of responses they get, to see how the questions have to be either redone, tweaked, or whatever, because that's one of the things you do. You always pilot a survey with people that don't know anything that's going on. Well, they know something about their area, but you pilot it to see with what you asked, is it what they interpreted to be asked? Did they understand it? So
Yeah, did
I'm
you hear what I think
hoping,
I said? Yeah.
pardon?
Did you hear what I think I said?
I think so. I think what I didn't hear was that the surveys, when you say they're not that useful, I would say you're probably right, but it's because the surveys were flawed.
Oh, maybe. I
Because
just
people
know
don't know.
for a long
Because
time,
people don't know how to
statistic,
put together. Yeah, go ahead.
the response to surveys was not that great for a long time. You could send out
True.
100 and if you got 10 back, you thought you had done a great job. So
That's true.
I'm leery of that. The only thing that occurs to me is, do we need to figure out how to set aside money to get this information into the public's hands in a concise and clear way?
Yes, that's probably, I have the paper to do that. I have the envelopes to do that. I don't have enough stamps to do that. And you want to have it pretty, you want it to go out several ways. You can go out in town reports, but I think at some point there's going to have to be some kind of a mailing to folks to cover the base that we really made an effort to do that. And where we have already invested in most of that, I wish there was a way we could do a bulk mailing, or maybe, David, this was a question that I was going to be asking you. Is there a way that we could get a list from the respective towns of the names and addresses of residents that the town can just print out on labels, so that we could just put them on the envelopes with the stamps and send them out.
That's a dicey matter. It's up to the town clerks. Some town clerks will only fulfill a request for that kind of data as a PDF and make you scan it and pull it out. Maybe I'm just showing my age, but I think the newspaper is a good way to communicate. And I don't know if you noticed that you read about Warwick a fair amount in the Recorder. And that isn't by accident. I mean, it takes volunteer time and some of my staff time. And the most important thing is making yourself available. So, I mean, I talk to the press almost every day, and I'm doing it long enough that I know that if they're any good, what I think the story is, they're just looking beyond and under and around it. But we've got a good resource in the Recorder. But you know, it requires
good
press
idea.
releases and most importantly, you know, following up and explaining. But we have a goal around here to get in Desi's face in the newspaper every week. And
Okay,
you see it happening.
that's, I don't not agree with that, but I guess I would say I'm old fashioned and that getting a communication, at least one, mailed to my address that I open and I have a hard copy and I can read and I can, you know, and understand it, it makes what I see in the paper more meaningful. And
I
it makes
suppose,
the
from my
reach out.
perspective, I throw it away unopened. You just wasted your money. I throw away at least half of my mail unopened. And that would get it. That would get that treatment from me.
Now,
Mm.
Oh,
I
there
wonder how
you
much
go.
money you've thrown
Push
away.
it at me by email, I might look at it, but
If it came from your town, would you throw it out?
if I knew that's what it was, I probably would.
But you already know about it then.
Well,
This
and
would
I
be
just
for the
don't
people
want
who
to,
don't know.
every Saturday I purge around here.
I should have you come down and you can clean my house.
I pull a lot of stuff out of
I
the
got one
trash, too.
Yeah, I got one thing in the mail, two things in the mail that I weren't expecting. One was a credit card update because I didn't know it expired, totally unmarked and everything. And it looked like junk mail, threw it away. And I actually got a check for almost a couple $100 on a refund on something that again, you know, just looked like, junk mail. And then later on, I got a notice saying, we sent this to you. Are you planning on cashing it? And I had to call them. And then they said, all right, we'll send you another one, but if you find the other one, rip it up. So I at least open my mail and then throw it away just in case.
You gotta be careful of the ones that don't look like they come from anybody. They're the ones that have.
Yeah. So I learned.
So
Well, I think
All
the
right,
bottom line.
I think the bottom line is that we could try harder to get in the paper. I don't know what we have to put in there. Maybe we should just get a notice in there that we're meeting.
Well, David, to that point, we what do we call it? The PR committee, we have to meet, but I've been trying to figure out, I needed information from Deb in order to get an article in the paper to, you know, with information from Mike. I've been following you, so it'll be easy to do this piece. But from Deb, you know, I had to be really careful. So when I talked to her, we agreed that I'll put something together after we talk to the consultants. So that'll be tomorrow. I thought I'd have something in 2 weeks ago, and then I found out that from Mike's little bomb that was dropped, when I followed that up, I went, geez, I got to do some homework here, and then I'll be in a place where I can write something and put it in the paper, David and folks. So after tomorrow, I'm hoping to get an article together. David, I'll send you like a draft. Give me your comments, and then I'll get it out.
So I think the point of all this is we need to meet people where they want to be met. And some people would rather watch a YouTube video, and some people would rather study a hard copy in their hand.
point.
Well,
Guys,
Well,
is
you're
about-
right, David. I think a hard copy to put on paper what we're doing and what we're projecting might be a pretty big document and not what somebody would bother to read. You know, if you can't do
Well,
it
it's gotta
on
be-
one page concisely, they're not going to read it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I am pointing a lot of people to the six-town website, the amount of documentation. I mean, even if you're not interested in the combination, the amount of documentation about Gilmontague or about Pioneer is an awesome tool. There's a lot of analysis and data that I find really valuable.
So that should be in this succinct document that we do a full court press. We
I
do it
try
in
to
the
point- I
paper.
try to point people to it, you know?
Yeah, well, we do it in the paper. We do it by email. We do it by a hard copy to folks. We do it by something in each town hall. You know, we just got to have a full court press to get it everywhere. We do it to get it to the PTOs to share with their members and maybe get some, maybe have the PTO actually run the survey for us, and they can have a, you know, a lottery drawing for those that have handed theirs in. But we've got to figure out ways to definitely get a good percentage back, as Jane had pointed out, because the first question we'll ask is when you say, well, the survey said is, well, how many did you get back? And if you say, well, we got 12% back, you know, it's like, well, what happened to the other 88%? What are they thinking? So,
Well,
And-
all of
and
my
we have to be-
experience is in direct mail and such has been with nonprofits and fundraising, and 2% is an amazing, is considered successful. And then lately, we've all seen an awful lot of survey or fundraising and disguised as survey.
Mhm.
oh yeah,
We,
and a
we
lottery
want,
with it.
we want to be sure to use more than the school for distribution. Otherwise, we're going to miss half the population.
Yes.
Agreed. That's why we're
Guys,
looking at a
it's-
mailing.
It's coming up on
I think if we
6:30.
do want to get to do any kind of surveys, that's where we get grad school students, UMass, Antioch and Keene, whatever. They all got to do some stuff, and so that if we ever do really see a survey we want, I think that's the route we ought to take.
Mhm.
This is a
Okay.
good discussion, but it sounds like we're becoming the PR subcommittee.
And in that vein, what am I supposed to be saying to Northfield and Bernardston, since I'm supposed to be a liaison to them? Just that? If you have a question, ask me, and I'll see if I can find you an answer. Or we
Or-
want your suggestions. What is the charge here?
What's your topic? You mean in terms of what the planning board's doing? Is that regarding that?
Well, I was asked if I would represent this committee to Bernardston and to Northfield.
I
I got
think
an
the
idea.
idea was to find out if they
Real
had
fundamental.
concerns.
Real fundamental education didn't they just go to a 5-member board?
Northfield?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they need some fundamental education, as in we exist, we're looking at this, we've accomplished this.
I guess I would, I think you're right, David. You're right on. First is the education. But Jane, originally, so beyond that, it's questions of, you know, we're exploring, looking at, you know, a potential new school district. Can you talk to me about, you know, the existing district we have? What do you think's good about it? What do you think's needs improvement? Where do you think, you know, we shine, and where are the problematic areas? Because that information is what would help in putting together a survey. Because if that's what they're thinking, and those are their kind of questions, perspective, you know, I have a lot of experience in doing quantitative and qualitative experience. but I am a volunteer and I am proud to be a volunteer. And I don't have any interest in moving over to, okay, pay me to start doing this because it takes many, many hours. But I do know enough to tell you before a survey goes out that it's garbage or it's pretty good or it's going to get us some good information. So I sit back and I expect the experts that we have contracted with to come up with some quality work that I can assess. Do you need a motion to adjourn?
We do need a motion to adjourn. And if
David, do
now's
we
the
have a
time that
meeting
works
coming
for
up?
me.
Yeah,
I-
David, we have
I
another
can't stay
meeting
too much.
coming up.
Yeah, you
David?
got 14 minutes. Have a nice,
So, and I have an invite to that.
I will forward you one if you're feeling left out.
Okay, I'd make a motion that we adjourn.
Second,
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Jane Dutcher,
Aye.
Alan Genovese,
Aye.
Lynn Reynolds,
aye.
David Young,
Aye.
Mike Naughton, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
I
Good
will
night,
send
everybody.
you a link
Yeah.
to the meeting and see you next week.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good night.
Night.